Hi, I'm Shawn Douglass, an actor and director in Chicago, Illinois, and also a member of the theater department faculty at Northwestern University. And this is An Actor's Arc. Anish Jethmalani is a warm, sensitive, and smart actor who has become a favorite of Chicago audiences. Anish also served as the artistic director of Eclipse Theater. Hi, Anish Jethmalani. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
How did you get started thinking you wanted to be an actor? What was the impulse that said, hey, this thing might be for me?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually come from a family of artists. So my family immigrated here to the States back in the early 70s. And particularly my mother's side of the family, were all involved in the arts very heavily, particularly in the theater. And so I, at a very young age, was already part of that. I was acting in some dramas that were being put together, plays that were being put together. But that really wasn't the sort of the linchpin that I said, oh, this is what I want to do for a living or what I want to pursue. It was more just like I understood the world growing up because I was surrounded by it from a young age. I remember distinctly, like when I was, I think, I want to say I was around 7 or 8. My late uncle, he was directing a number of plays, and one of them was an adaptation of Cinderella, and he wanted me to be the narrator for this play. Now, I didn't know what I was doing, or it was one of these things where I was just coming out for a few minutes to say some things, and then the action would unfold from there. But I was 6 or 7 at the time, and I had no idea what I was doing. And my uncle said, this will be a great experience for you. You'll learn a lot. You have a lot of charm, and so they did this sort of. It was kind of a musical of Cinderella, and they had this musical track that I was essentially lip syncing to at that time, and it was all done in Hindi, and so I was part of this ensemble of players. I felt a little uncomfortable, but I credit him for really pushing me and getting me to give me courage to be in front of an audience of people. But he really pushed me, and he said, you can do this. He was very tough on me as a director, even at a young age. But the toughest thing was to get me out on stage to perform in front of a live audience. That was the biggest hurdle for me, was just to be out there. And he said, look, you just have fun, go out there, enjoy yourself, and don't think about the people. Think about what you're doing and the story that you're trying to tell. I look back now and I think to myself, it was a courageous thing to do for myself, because I was very shy. I was very I was not comfortable being in front of an audience, and I think that really pushed me over to start to experience what that was. So that was my first sort of experience in the live theater, and then again, flash forward years later, I never thought that this was going to be something that I would do. It wasn't really until I was in middle school, towards I think I would say 7th or 8th grade, where I was part of an assembly, event that they brought in from the local high school. And there was a theater troupe that came in. It was all high school students, and I just remember being in the audience and just being transfixed by what they were doing. And I remember it being a lot of fun to watch. I remember thinking, wow, it would be so amazing to be a part of that. And then just a little bit after that, the same high school theater director brought us to come and see a production of Oliver. And so we saw Oliver, and it was again amazing. I was blown away by it. And then I remember going to the high school when I was a freshman and running into the director, and he was going to be my teacher for this class in high school. And I started learning a lot from him, just about the world of theater, just about appreciation for plays, appreciation for different playwrights. And I took a consecutive amount of classes from him that just sparked my interest. And then he actually approached me and he said, you should come and try out, as they called it, try out for the fall production. And I said, I don't know. I mean, at that time, I was more interested in playing football. I wanted to be on the high school football team. I don't know why. I was more interested in sports, and so I was working on that, but I ended up injuring myself, and I couldn't pursue that anymore. My high school theater teacher director, he said, come try out for the play, the fall production. And it was a play called Trelawney of the Wells. And I wanted to be involved in something in addition to my schoolwork. And I thought, okay, well, what the heck, I'll just go ahead and give it a shot. Not thinking anything would come of it. I just went in there. I did a monologue. I was completely nervous. I think I stumbled through that audition in a very, very bad way. And so I walked away from that experience thinking, okay, well, I did it. I didn't think anything was going to come of it. And sure enough, I ended up getting one of the roles in the play, and I was pretty surprised. I just didn't think that was going to happen at all. It wasn't a big role; it was a pretty small role, but just the fact that I got anything, was it was an incredible moment for me as a freshman in high school, and to be in a high school play, to be working with that director. His name is Charles Berglund. I kind of credit him for really getting me into the performing arts at that age, and really starting to push me in that direction to think about leaning more into that world. Those students, I got to be friends with a lot of them. They became my community in high school, and so I was very fortunate that I was able to find my sort of my place, in the school, and I pursued auditioning for productions there. I was fortunate that I was able to get cast in a number of them. Looking back now, for me, the most important part of that entire experience during high school for me was bonding with those students, learning about being in front of an audience and what that was like, finding the courage to speak in front of an audience, and finding an appreciation for plays and playwriting and all of the elements of theater that kind of come together.
Can I just stop you there for a
Yeah,
second? You had three really important things going on. It sounds like you had a supportive, not only nuclear family, but extended family who were interested in the arts and were open to that. And then you had, as many of us have had, someone who said, hey, have you thought about doing this and encouraging you, right, to put
Yeah,
your
yeah,
toe
absolutely.
further into the water. And then thirdly, then you had a supportive community that you found.
And then the other thing is like, for me, it's particularly being someone who is a child of immigrants, who you don't look like everybody else in the community. You're kind of the minority, of course. And so I think that there was this feeling like, uh, am I doing the right thing? A
Mm,
lot of my friends were not really interested in theater. And when I say friends, I mean friends from the Indian community or uh, from the other different minority groups. That was something that was not their their thing. It just wasn't their calling.
mhm.
And for me, it felt like I was this odd man out kind of. I think that my family, while they supported me, they still wanted me to sort of straddle that line of being practical as well, saying that, okay, this is great that you're enjoying this and that you found a community and you found a group of people that you enjoy working with, and that you have something to fill your time, and something that's positive, and that's something that's nurturing, and something that will better you as a person, in your life. But that said, we still want to be able to focus on what is going to be your career. What
Ah,
is going to be the thing that's going to sort of uh, you know uh, feel like you're going to make a living at. And because it's probably not going to be this thing. This is a thing that you're going to do if you want to do it, maybe as a hobby or something on the side. So there was still that push and pull, I think, with my
uh-huh.
family. And I'm sure, I've heard that story from a number of people who are children of immigrants, first generation, who are pushed in a more sort of practical pursuit of a career that's stable, and
Sure.
things. And I think, for them, in looking back, it's like they made a lot of sacrifices to come over here and live a better life, and they wanted their children to have a better life than them. And so it's a common sort of theme that you see
Mm,
across first generation Americans. I knew, like, theater was going to be something that I wanted to be a part of and continue to study and continue to pursue. And so there was no question in my mind that that was going to be a concentration for me in college. And I would have to sort of add on something to that to appease the parents. And so
sure.
I did end up doing like another degree in business and econ, and just to sort of be able to check that, check that box. Um, but
And where did you do that? Where you were, did you go to school?
so there were some big things that happened in my life at that time. So
Hmm.
some you know some rather dramatic things. And so my I lost my mother at age 18. So she had
Mm,
passed away, unfortunately. And that was a big, moment in my life where things had changed dramatically. And it made me feel like uh, I had to stay closer to home. I will say that one other moment for me that had a huge impact on my wanting to pursue the career and the craft was seeing a production of all plays, "Lend Me a Tenor," at the Royal George Theatre. We took a field trip down to seeing that play, and I just remember having a blast. And it crystallized for me at that moment that I was like, oh, there's a big theater scene down here. And um, and I said, I want to be a part of that, and I want to have that experience what I just saw. So I said, okay, Chicago, I'm going to pursue my higher education somewhere here in Chicago. Applied to a few of the programs here, and I remember Loyola. Loyola was one of them that stuck out to me, and the reason was because I went down there to audition for a scholarship. And I thought this is perfect. Loyola sits right there on the lake. They seem to have a pretty decent theater program. I went to audition for them, although they weren't anywhere, as well known as like maybe DePaul and Northwestern. But I also felt like, this was something where this was a smaller program. I felt like I could get more attention here in terms of being able to get the education that I wanted. And then the other thing was that I was able to balance having both a theater education and an education in business as well, whereas I couldn't really maybe pursue that as heavily at some of the other programs, at least at that time. So the thing that really made it work for me was that after my audition, the chairman of the theater department, Jonathan Wilson, who's fairly well known here in the Chicago theater community, he came up to me afterwards and he's like, listen, this is my card. All my info is on here. I want you to stay in touch with me. Let me know what your plans are. We are really interested in having you come here. And
Wow.
and he's like, let's see what we can do to make it work. And I love the fact that here was a guy who was leading the program. He was, a minority who I could sort of be, commiserate with. I love that he had a leadership quality to him, and the program seemed to be very interesting to me. So it was that the combination of that, getting the scholarship, and having the ability to be able to focus both on theater and business at the same time.
While you were at Loyola, what were the big kind of things that opened up for you about acting? What changed for you from your high school experience?
It delved deeper into character work. It delved deeper into having an appreciation for plays beyond the Western canon. It delved deeper into understanding the structure of a play, trying to sort of sit in the shoes of every individual that's involved in the process. So it's just not about acting or directing, but you're also focused on costume design. You're focused on sound design, lighting. You're focused on all of these other elements that really sort of are absolutely necessary for a play to work. I got to step back really quick because I forgot one other thing that I should mention.
Yes.
Before Loyola, I was at College of DuPage for a little bit. I did a little stint there, and I also did some productions there as well, and that was also very, very profound in building my appreciation for the craft.
What are the things then that you felt you knew about acting when you were getting ready to leave Loyola and head into the professional world?
I understood more about how to develop a character. I understood more about how to break down a script, and just knowing that there were more mechanics involved in theater than just the idea of just performing or getting up on stage and doing anything you want. That there was a lot more to it, and I think to have a deeper appreciation of that, while not necessarily maybe a smooth execution, a deeper appreciation of it was what I felt like I took away from my education there. And I think also the fact that I, building that confidence of, again, being in front of an audience, understanding how you're sort of carving out your journey as an actor. We had to keep journals in some of our classes to kind of go from day to day and what our experiences were like. That was part of our work. In terms of the what I think I may have walked away with thinking this was a plus, but actually was a negative, was that performing in large theater spaces was going to be the norm. Not necessarily, we all used to kind of look at the black box. I shouldn't say we all. I mean, some of us looked at the black box as the secondary kind of theater, and that you really wanted to have the experience more on the main stage, not knowing that when you get out into the professional world, most of your experience is going to be in a smaller space.
So, as you were moving into the professional world, appreciating the things that Loyola had prepared you to do,
Yeah.
Were there things that you became aware of that you needed to work on?
Well, I had a deep affinity for classical theater. I wanted to pursue it more and get stronger at it. So I applied for some overseas programs at that time that had a little bit more concentration on that. That dealt with language, that dealt with classical text, that dealt with studying that kind of theater. And I applied for a program at the Royal National Theatre. I applied for a program at Oxford School of Drama. I ended up going there and studying there for a bit, and that was an amazing experience for me. I just loved being a part of that program. We delved deeper into not only language in terms of how to use language, but how to analyze classical text, how to sort of look at meter, how to look at using your body in the physical space. One of the things that I loved, one of the professors I had there, his name was George Peck. He ran the program, and he gave me some advice about memorization at that time, because line memorization is is always the Achilles heel for an actor. And he's like, look, don't focus too much on memorizing your lines. Focus on memorizing more of your events. Focus on memorizing what you're trying to do. Focus on your actions. Memorize your actions. Memorize what you are trying to sort of accomplish in your role. If you can do those things, the lines will come to you. Of course, you need to know your lines, but also that there is substance behind the lines, right? There's something going on behind all of those words, and you have to infuse those words with something. And so it's hard to get all those words in your head if you don't know what you're doing. So that's what he was trying to sort of teach me and the other students in the program. And
what drew you so much to classical work? I mean, why do you think you had an interest or excitement around that?
I mean, I was looking for role models basically at that time, folks who looked like me, who were performing, and it was very hard to find those people at that time. Now I think it's much easier, but at that time it was difficult. So you looked at some of the actors that looked like me, and a lot of them were based in England. A lot of them were doing classical work. Ben Kingsley is one that comes to my mind, only because he was half Indian, and the fact that he had such a thriving career at the Royal Shakespeare Company, to watch his work at that time was inspiring, and to see some of the interviews he was doing, and this was beyond his film work, right? I mean, that's how I came to know him, but I understood that he had a large body of theater work before he became famous. And so to have that sort of connection, to have as I guess, if you want to call it, a role model to look at, was what opened the door for me to sort of start to dive into this world of classical theater. And then having the opportunity to perform in a school production of Hamlet, getting to know the language there, and then talking to some of my teachers who had performed in theater and drawing to the classics as well, getting an appreciation for that. But I think more importantly, it seemed like endless possibilities in classical theater for me. It was like you could play characters large and small, and there was so much to be gained by using the language and doing what you wanted to do as a character.
So when you returned to Chicago and began your career, what did you find as you started out?
So my first production acting in Chicago was a play called Sweet Land of Liberty at a company called Theater Q. They were the first ones to cast me right out of the gate. And I remember auditioning, the audition was at the director's apartment. So I had to go up a flight of stairs and go in a room. And, it was a very small company, just getting started. And at the time, we had Performing, which was in paper, in print. So you would find the listing for
the trade paper.
Yeah, the trade paper. Yeah, the trade paper Performing, and they had the listings for the auditions, and I was just auditioning for anything and everything at that time. The hunger was just was at a fever pitch, and quickly I realized the Chicago theater scene. It's known for pretty much performing in the nooks and crannies of every kind of space. And so we ended up, doing the production in a garage. That was my first experience in Chicago theater, was performing at the Halsted Street Cafe on Halsted Avenue in Boys Town. And it was literally the garage of this space,
Fantastic.
And it was like maybe, I want to say no more than 20 to 30 seats. Very sort of gritty kind of, your costume, your dressing room would be in the cafe right next door to the garage, because it was like a bar and then a cafe and then the garage in the very back of the space. And we would do the show right there. They were focusing mostly on LGBTQ productions, and they wanted to be right up there with About Face, which was a little bit more well known at that time. Getting out and starting to do that kind of work. And so you had a handful of these theaters that were just starting to make their mark. And for me, it was just awesome just to be a part of that entire experience. Just to perform and say, I'm doing my first Chicago theater production. I've got a great character that I'm playing, and we're doing it in a garage, literally in a garage. was just awesome. I just had a lot of fun doing it. I was quite nervous too. It was my first thing out of school, and you didn't have the protection of being in front of your peers or your teachers. You were out there, kind of putting it out there in front of a live audience, people who didn't know you, and I would say, looking back, there was a lot to learn. I don't think I was comfortable yet as an actor. Even though I learned a lot in school and came to appreciate a lot of things, I didn't really put it into action yet. I knew, one of my friends told me, like just recently, it was like, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to be a marathon. You're going to be learning in your entire life, your entire career. You're going to be learning. The whole journey is learning, and you will never be at perfection. It just will never happen. Anybody who thinks they're at perfection is lying to you,
or to themselves.
Or to themselves. Yeah. You are always constantly learning. And that's the thing I didn't understand at the time I was starting. I thought, okay, well, I've reached the finish line. I'm here, and now I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Not knowing that actually I was just at the very beginning of what I needed to start to learn.
Can you share with me an experience or two where you felt like a time when you got more comfortable, or working with someone who made you feel like you were able to play with greater ease or more understanding, or where you felt yourself coming into your confidence as a professional actor?
It wouldn't be one single individual.
Mhm.
For me, it was like working with a collection of people over time, people that I've came to admire, who kept me on my toes as a performer, um, both as
Actors or directors or both? Or
everyone. I would say directors, actors, designers,
Mhm.
you know, audience members. I mean, anyone involved in the experience. Uh, I think it just, for me, they were touch points, right? Touch points of wisdom that I was able to gain here and there. So I can't point you to something that was like, oh my God, this is that moment where I feel
Yeah.
comfortable, because it was, I think, a buildup of these experiences over time where I
Mhm.
could get sort of more comfortable in my own skin, comfortable in my own ease of being on stage. Um, and that's not to say that I'm fully there. There are moments where I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. It's like, I don't think, it's a process going from show to show, or piece to piece, or whatever collaboration you're having at that time, right? Or you're building upon the previous experience that you've had before, and you're trying to sort of take whatever you learned before and bring it with you in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
But you also can't expect that that's going to work all the time. That you're going to have to adapt and be able to sort of figure out how is it working in this present moment, in this time, and what you have to do now as a performer, um, because all the experiences are not going to be one and the same. Um, you can learn from those things and bring it with you, but they're to say that, um, the next piece I'm going to work on is going to be a breeze, or I'm going to just sort of be able to sort of just relax and I know what I'm doing, I think is a fool's errand.
Did you ever have a moment in or a production in which you thought this is going to be a breeze, and found it to be a challenge that you hadn't been expecting, or vice versa?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. The Father, which I did with Remy Bobo, a great example of a character that I underestimated.
Mm.
Um, because I looked at the play and I'm like, oh my God, what an amazing play, beautiful play, and a great character. But this character only appears, the character that I'm playing in The Father only appeared in a few select scenes. Now, those are very pivotal scenes.
Hmm.
But I was like, okay, so I know that I've got a few scenes here to do what I need to do. But I didn't realize going into that experience that this was much bigger than just my few little scenes, because I had to understand what was going on in the other scenes as well. And the opposite of the character that was playing opposite me, or my other persona, I guess, I had to understand what that person was doing, or what their motivations were, because we were all sort of trying to, um, jockey to create this experience for David Darlow. He was the lead actor for this play, and so our job was to create this experience for his journey in that play. So what you think is a character that only appears here and there is far more than that. It's a much more complicated beast, and I didn't come to realize that until I got into rehearsals and started to understand how much more complicated that character and that play was.
So you mentioned how this accumulation of experiences
Mhm.
gradually put you more at ease on stage and more comfortable and confident in what you were doing. Um, and I wonder also how, or if, um, as your personal life developed,
Yeah,
and your family life developed, if that had an
yeah.
effect on your work, how you saw your work, um, added experiences that you could draw from? What was the influence of that, if any?
Uh, I feel like life does inform you. Life is your biggest teacher as an actor, because you're living your life, you're living your experiences, and your life is going to change. I take it from having a losing a parent at a young age, of going through different types of relationships, personally, going through that heartbreak, uh, going to accomplishments that I was able to make, going through the personal rejection of not having the kind of, maybe the career that you etched out for yourself, in the beginning, that you thought it was going to be. There are things that life does to you, um, that shapes you, right? And I think the biggest thing I can say about being a performer is that you got to look at those moments and look back at your own path in life and learn from it and use that to kind of inform how you bring a character to stage. Because in the end, the best teacher is your own personal experiences and how you can infuse that in the story that you're trying to tell. When I got married, when I became a father, uh, I I knew more of what that experience was like, and I think, playing these kind of characters now, that are dads, or that are going through any kind of ups and downs with relationships, that definitely helped sort of lock in more of the being able to mine from those moments of experience that I was able to bring from my own life. But
Mhm.
from a practical standpoint, just in terms of being able to balance a career and also family life as well, I had to look at like how much time I was uh, spending away from family, particularly with young children. It's not easy. It can be a challenge. But for me personally, it was more about um, being a bit more judicious about like projects that I'm taking on. Where do I want to spend my time and energy? Um, and also being able to understand that sometimes financially, you have to sort of make choices that you don't necessarily want to make. So it becomes this sort of mix of like what's going to appease the finances, what's going to appease the time aspect of it, what's going to appease my own sort of artistic interest of it. All of these things I didn't have to think about when I was just on my own.
Uh-huh.
Those are there are more sort of ingredients in the equation of or the mix, I should say, of making a decision on jumping into a project than there were before.
I'm going to ask you a question, Anish, about what it was like when you were coming up in the ranks in Chicago for an actor of South Asian descent, how you were seen, what you were seen for, what, if any, challenges there were in that process for you.
At the time that I started, there was literally like very very few people involved in the business at that time. Um, I remember doing a production at the Goodman, understudying an actor named Farhan Tahir. And I think he was intrigued by the fact that he was seeing somebody who looked like him that was in the business, because he had been at it for quite some time.
Hmm.
And the one thing that he told me was that, he's like, you have to get used to the fact that this industry, um, there are many industries that will check and counter uh, racism, but this is one industry that does not. It sort of just kind of looks away from it, um, and it's just part of the system. You have to get used to that's the way it is.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that he said to me, it was like, literally you can count on your hand how many actors that look like us or are of our descent are out there in the industry. And that was eye-opening to me, because I was like, I didn't think about those things at all. I mean, I knew like I probably stuck out, but it wasn't one of these things that was sort of at the forefront of my mind. But he said those things, and he said, like, just keep those things in mind, that you're going to run into walls just because of the way you look and the way you are. And don't let that, don't let that stop you. Don't let that, depress you, or just keep fighting through it. And so that was, kind of inspiring to hear from him, to understand that sort of part of the business that was, very much at the underbelly of it, was this idea that the business is not necessarily, it's not going to be fair to people of color. It's not going to be fair to women. That there is a dark side to it that is can be ugly at times, but you just have to sort of rise above it as much as you can. And again, I'm speaking from a time where it's not like it is now. I mean, it was just sort of put under the rug. Now, you talk to people like Chuck Smith and some of these guys who have been around the block for a very long time. And one of the things that Chuck Smith told me, and Chuck Smith, of course, is one of the resident directors at the Goodman. And I'll never forget this. He told me, he's like, look, if you think it was bad then, you have no idea how bad it was back when we were coming up, because it was really bad. There's no way I can understand what artists like Chuck and his peers and I think about Henry Godinez and some of these folks who have been in the business, Aura, another one, who have been in the business for a long, long time and have seen their challenges because of the color of their skin.
Thank you for that. I mean, it's really amazing, and the kind of change that has been demanded, and rightly so, in the last few years, to know that change from the progression of what Chuck was talking about to your experience to a time we're in now where things really do feel like the world is shifting and opening.
It's definitely shifting. I mean, it's been shifting for the past, I think, 10 years. I would say there's been a younger generation of artists who've done far more in terms of their activism, their groundwork. There was a pivotal moment in 2006 for an article by Time Out called Colorblind. And it was written by Novid Parsi and Christopher Pyatt. And they interviewed Aura Jones, Lisa Tajero, myself, Erica Daniels, I think, was part of that as well, Ivan Vega. And, I think that article really shook the foundation of the community. They had not seen something like that in print for a long time. It was a very extensive article about why is the Chicago theater community so white, and why are productions, being cast and produced by predominantly white theaters and white artists and so forth. And I think it was an examination of and a deep dive into, like, what is the root of the problem. And I think that was a watershed moment for the community, because I know that big theaters like Steppenwolf brought in more artists of color into their ensemble than they had ever had before. Right after that article came out, and you were starting to see more and more theaters start to really examine how they were operating, and really start to try to do a check on themselves. I don't think it went as far as when social media started to rise in that regard, and then you started to see a monumental shift, probably maybe even 5 to 6, maybe even 7 years later down the road, when social media really took off. So it was slow getting out of the gate but I would credit that article as being a moment in time where things really started to change for the better.
I'd like to ask you, Anish, if there is an experience that you had that you look back on as extraordinary for yourself, a project that you just absolutely adored. Do you find something interesting in every one of them, or there are one or two that really stand out as things that you hold dear to your journey as an actor?
The Caretaker with Ron O.J. Parson and Kareem Bandiali.
And where was that?
That was at Writers Theater.
Uh-huh.
We did that 10 years ago. That was a wonderful experience for me, just because I was able to step out of, my, I guess, have an opportunity to play a character that I've never had the opportunity to play and never thought I would, actually. I've always been a big fan of Pinter, and when they called me for The Caretaker, and I think Ron also mentioned this in some previous interview, but I told him, I said, I think you got the wrong guy, because I don't think I'm right for The Caretaker. I said, I don't, that's just not, you probably have called the wrong person. And they were like, no, we are looking at this differently, and we definitely want to consider you in the mix, and we want to try something different with this. And and it was Ron who really was championing this idea of the brothers being, of South Asian descent or Middle Eastern or what have you, and he was looking at this idea of them. He also looked at the idea of them being Black, but it was something not traditional, right? With the way Pinter has been performed before, and so when I got the call to work on that show, I was both terrified and excited at the same time. Terrified in the regard that this was material that I was always excited to do, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off or to do it well. It's very difficult to do, and any actor will tell you that, and it's just Pinter is tough, and so it was a challenge, but I think we left a memorable impression in production, and it was collaborating with those guys, and Bill Norris, of course, was awesome as well, and collaborating with all those guys was a treat, and it's one that I look on back fondly. And then I would say working with Nick Bowling and being part of Timeline now as a company member. I've worked on a handful of shows with Nick, but for me, working on Disappearing Number was one of my favorite experiences, just because we were able to tell a story that really isn't told that often.
But you mentioned Timeline. What's that experience of being a company member in relationship to your acting? Does it change anything for you, or?
Yeah, for me, I've been a part of a few companies. Eclipse was definitely one that's still close to my heart, because I had been with them for a number of years as an ensemble member and as a artistic director, but I got a lot of my experience working at Eclipse, and let me just first say that it's a privilege and an honor to be a part of these organizations. It's not everybody has the opportunity to be a part of a collective, to be able to guide the creation of the programming. So I say that with a lot of humility, that to be a member of these organizations is a privilege. But I also know that, like, I was a very different person when I came into Eclipse than I am with Timeline. With Eclipse, I was focused on trying to run an ensemble, trying to run a theater company that was focused on working on the works of one playwright per season. So trying to sort of cater to its mission, and also focus on myself as an actor. I wanted to grow with my ensemble, but it was hard to do that, all those things at one time with one company. I think one of the things that I was able to better understand when working with a company like Timeline is that I know that my purpose there is much different. It's not necessarily specifically focused on myself as a performer. It's more focused on the good of the company and how we can move the company forward in terms of its mission and how it serves the community as a whole. But I think being a part of any company these days is always a challenge, right? Because you're trying to figure out, like, how do you serve the purpose of the organization, but also how do you serve yourself as an artist? And that sort of push and pull can be at odds with one another many times. I think what it comes down to for each and every individual who's part of a company is just to try to figure out, like, what are your priorities as an artist, and how do they serve you, and then how do they serve the organization as a whole. And once you figure those things out, then you'll know, whether you feel like you're in the right place and working with the right group of people. And the other thing I should also say is that, where you start with a company or as an ensemble member or what have you, may be very different from where you are 5 or 10 years later or 15 years later, because you change, your life changes, things change. And
what you want out of
so, yeah,
something changes too.
Yeah. And so your place may not be the same as it was when you first became a part of the company, or it's going to evolve. The other thing I should mention really quick is that, Chicago tends to be a little bit tribal in terms of their companies. We all kind of stake our, or put our stake in the ground, I should say, and carve out our niche, and we're all kind of jostling to sort of get our art out to as many people as possible. Sometimes, overlapping audiences, and but I think that we can be tribal, but we can also be there is no other city that I know of that has the kind of community that we have. And what I mean by that is that we are, for the most part, I think we're very supportive of each other. We're very we try our best to lift each other up as much as we can, I think, to a certain extent. And there is this feeling like that we as a collective are trying to work together as best as we can, even though we are in the face of numerous challenges right now in the world, and looking at our industry as well. Our industry is going through a vast amount of change right now, and I should mention that the demands that have been put out by We See You White American Theater has been also a pivotal moment for our industry as a whole, not only Chicago, but I think across the country. Yes. And so we have to do a big examination of ourselves as an industry, and try to figure out, like, how are we going to put ourselves forward in a way that's going to account for more transparency, more accountability, and ultimately, how do we better ourselves as creators and artists for each other, make room and to create space. And I think that's a big challenge ahead of us, and we have to meet that challenge. And it's going to be difficult, I think, but we have to do it. We have to do it. We cannot be the same industry that we were prior to the pandemic. We have to change.
I'd like to finish with a little thing I call 3, 2, 1. 3 is 3 actors whom you admire, and a quick reason why.
Irfan Khan.
I've always been a big fan of his work. To see his honesty on screen is inspiring. He passed away almost a year ago now, and but I tend to think of him as a performer as someone who was humble and genuine and honest in everything that he does. Adrian Lester is another one. He's dynamic actor. I saw him on stage doing Hamlet many years ago. It was probably one of the best productions of Hamlet that I'd ever seen. As a performer who's able to sort of lean into the classics and really thrive with it. He's someone that I always enjoy watching him perform. And then I would say Sigourney Weaver. It's another actor
Weaver.
that she's great. She's great. I've seen her now. I saw her on stage. I've seen her, of course, in her film work. There's a lot of grit and bravery in a lot of things that she does, and I feel like she's always pushing the needle and being very aggressive in her choices in the characters that she plays. And
2 is trick and treat. So a trick of the trade, something that you keep in your back pocket as an actor that helps you through a performance maybe, or something that you enjoy employing on occasion on stage.
I will say there has been this line memorization app, Line Learner. I think it is. It has been a godsend. I just found out about it maybe a few years back, but it was great. It was great. I mean, I started using it, and it just helped me, and I'm sure it helped a lot of other actors just to be able to get their lines down.
And then the treat is something that still delights you about being an actor.
What I still love about live theater is that there's nothing like being able to be in the moment when everything is working very well. Everything is firing on all cylinders in a scene or in a moment that you've crafted with a group of artists, and seeing how that resonates for an audience, because it takes both the audience and the performers to make that moment live and thrive. And when it's there, it's a beautiful thing, and when it's gone, it's gone.
One thing that you are still striving toward as an actor, still looking forward to, or an opportunity you would love to have?
I think I feel like I can still look at trying to look at the beginning of a process, the middle of a process, and the end of a process, and analyzing how that entire flow is, and understanding from the moment of being offered a role, considering that role, analyzing that role, analyzing the script, scoring that script, going into the rehearsal process, being open to ideas, being open to trying things, listening to my collaborators, being able to come up with ideas, all of these things. I feel like I'm wanting to still sharpen, still try to make better. And
That's more than one, but I'm going to give you full credit. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, that's terrific. That's great.
Yeah.
Anish Jethmalani, thank you so much. It's been awesome to talk to you. It's been a while, but also just to learn so much about your journey, your arc of your career, and look forward to seeing where it goes next.
Shawn, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time, and it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.